Good morning. Today we're going to be going through a little bit of review from adding and subtracting polynomials. We are also going to take a look at multiplying a polynomial by a monomial. Go ahead and try out these first two questions. You can type your answer into the free response here in a second, and then I'll go through them. Okay, for the first one, it says simplify and then identify the parts. Well, in this first polynomial, I see that I have x terms like negative 5x and positive 7x. Those two can be combined to make 2x. I then see 3x squared and 2x squared, both of which are positive. I'll add those together to make 5x squared. Now this is a positive 2x, so it's plus 2x. And then the negative 8, well, it doesn't have anything to be combined, so we just have negative 8. Now I see a trinomial, meaning 3 terms, and I can identify the parts. The terms are 5x squared, 2x, and negative 8. I could go farther and identify more parts, like coefficient being 5 and another coefficient being 2. I could also identify the constant. The constant is negative 8. There is no variable. Now for the second one, you go ahead and try that out, enter in your answer, and I'll go over it. So for the second one, I can see that I have parentheses. I got to do some simplification, but that's okay. 8p to the fourth over 2p squared. Well, I know that I can divide the coefficients, leaving me with 4. Then p to the fourth divided by p squared just gives me p squared, because 4 minus 2 is 2. Now, I don't have anything to combine this with. That's just p, negative 9p, and this is just a variable p, like 3p. So I can combine those, leaving me with negative 6p. And likewise, like the last example, this constant is alone. So plus 12, there's nothing to combine with. So I can again identify the parts. The terms of this would be 4p squared, negative 6p, and a positive 12. Again, I could also identify the coefficient is 4, and another coefficient is negative 6. The constant is positive 12. So those are just some parts of polynomials. Let's move on to the goal of today. Today you're going to be learning how to multiply polynomials. You're going to have to be able to use the distributive property, you're going to have to be able to combine like terms, and you're going to have to be able to simplify exponential expressions, kind of like we did in that second warm-up example. Now today we're going to be focusing on multiplying monomials. That means one term by a polynomial. That means multiple terms. Let's take a look. I want you to recall the distributive property. When you were to take something outside of the parentheses and multiply it by everything in the parentheses. In this first case, 4 times everything in the parentheses is using the distributive property. So this results in 4y minus 4x plus, well, 4 times 9 would be 36. Now, this doesn't have any squared terms, but that's okay. It's still a trinomial with 3 terms. You go ahead and try out the next one, question 2, and then I will say the answer shortly. Now that you've tried it out, let's check your work. Multiplying by x into this parentheses, we would have 3x plus xy. It's just x times y. And then minus 2x squared. Careful, x times x will give you x squared. Try out the next one, and then I'll go over it. In this case, we're going to take y and multiply by each term inside the parentheses. So we have zy minus y squared. Remember, y times y is y squared. Then plus 3y. Now, these last two are not properly written. The standard form of a polynomial is to have the highest degree first. So in this case, we'd have negative 2x squared, because the highest degree is 2, or squared, plus xy plus 3x. That's our standard way of writing it, but I won't be too picky about that currently. In this next case, we'd have negative y squared plus 3y plus, plus zy plus 3y. because this technically is of order 2 because we have 2 variables. Now you go ahead, try out the last one, and then I will give the answer in a moment. So we should end up with 3x times 2x. Well, we're going to multiply those two numbers. So we have 6, and then multiply these two variables, x squared. Then we multiply 3x times 9, so we end up with 27x. That's what you should have found. If you have questions, please let me know. Let's move on to some more examples. So this is the first method we're looking at. It's just using the distributive property. This is very, very useful when multiplying a monomial, meaning one term, by a polynomial, meaning multiple terms. We just distribute that one term to each of the terms inside of the parentheses. In this case, we're multiplying a monomial, meaning 1, by a polynomial. In this case, a polynomial with 4 terms. And so our solution should have 4 distinct terms, unless we can suddenly combine like terms, which would happen if we could combine like terms in that first parentheses. Let's take a look at a more complex example of this. Here we have 7x outside the parentheses, multiplied by the binomial 6x plus 4y. So I'm going to go ahead and model through this. I'm going to multiply 6x times 7x. I'm going to also multiply 4y times 7x. So when I take 7x times 6x, I'll end up with 42x squared. Don't forget that multiplying a variable by itself gives you squared. Now we end up with 7x times 4y, which will have 7 times 4, which is 28, and then x times y, which we write as xy. This would be our answer to that multiplication question. Now for this one, you go ahead and try it out, and then I'll show the answer after a moment. Now that you've tried it, let's check your work. I'm going to take 4a times 8a. That's going to give me 32a squared. Then 4a times negative 8b. That's going to give me negative 32ab, because it's just a times b. I wouldn't write a squared or b squared. It's just a times b. That should be what you found. Now here is another example that I'll model through, and I'll give you one similar to try for yourself in a moment. I can see that I'm multiplying a monomial by a trinomial, something with 3 terms, and so I'm going to take that monomial and distribute it to each of those 3 terms. My first one, 8r squared times 4r squared, I'll multiply 8 and 4, the coefficients, to find 32. Then I'll multiply r squared times r squared, leaving me with r to the 4th. Now I go on to the next term. 8 times negative 5 will give me negative 40, and r squared times r gives me r to the 3rd. Now for my last term, I'll multiply 8 times 7, giving me 56, and there is no r here to multiply, but that's okay. I still have r squared. Essentially, this is 7r to the 0 power, and r squared times r to the 0, r to the 0 is equal to r squared. So this would be our answer after multiplying that monomial by the trinomial. You go ahead and try the next one. Here you'll multiply the monomial by the trinomial given. Write in your answer, and I'll go over it in a moment. So in this case, we again have a monomial in the front multiplied by the parentheses, which includes a trinomial. Our solution should have 3 different terms. So I'm going to multiply 9v squared by u squared. V squared and u squared cannot combine, so we end up with 9v squared u squared. I'm going to write my u's a little different. It's going to be a little challenging for me to write them like that. I'm not used to that, but I think it'll make it a little easier to see. Then we're going to multiply 9v squared by uv. In this case, we have 9v to the 3rd, because v squared times v to the 1st gives you v to the 3rd, and then we end up with just u. And you might say, wait, it was uv, you've changed it to vu. That's totally fine. Multiplication is what we call commutative, where you can swap, because v times u is the same as u times v. Lastly, I have 9v squared times negative 5v squared. So I'll have negative 45 for the coefficient. V squared times v squared will give me v to the fourth. This should be the answer. I hope that's what you found. Now for the last step for today, I want you to go to iExcel and practice these skills. Algebra 1 Y4, careful, it's in the Y section. The other one, Algebra 1 Z7, careful, it's in the Z section. Both of these are in the Algebra 1 section of iExcel for your practice. Algebra 1 Y1 is a monomial, let's say 9v squared times another monomial, let's say 4v to the 8th. That's the type of question you'll be doing there. Algebra 1 Z7 is a monomial, let's say 3xy, multiplied by a polynomial, let's say 2zy plus 3x minus 12. That's the type of question you'll be doing there. Please practice each of these to 85% or higher to count for practice for today. And as always, reach out if you have questions. Thank you.